Hello everyone, good day. Before I start my discussion, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Mondejar from the Btled HE-2A. Now, I will be discussing to you my assigned topic, which is entitled GMO or the Genetically Modified Organism. Now, let's start. So, in the first slide, as you can see, no, na ay girl. So, that girl, her name is Rosalie Eliasos. She is a former overseas Filipino worker in Singapore and turned in a farmer. So, she also attended the Integrated Pest Management farmers field nga school and was introduced to Biticorn. And also in 2001, kani si Rosalie Eliasos is one of the success story of GMOs. So, kani ang Biticorn is genetically modified corn that is resistant to the destructive Asian corn borer. And kaning si Rosalie Eliasos, nag-volunteer ni siya for demo testing sa iyahang field. Nya, ang kaning Biticorn na siya yield of 7.2 tons per acre. As kanang compared sa regular nga kanang yield na siya 4.2 tons per hectare. So, kung mas dako ka og tons per hectare, mas daghan siya ma-harvest, mas daghan siya og ma-collect nga mga Biticorn kaysa sa regular lang nga Biticorn. Kay ang kuan man god mo nang dako siya ma-harvest, it's because ang Biticorn is resistance na siya sa iyahang corn borer. And now, let's proceed to the another slide. So, in the next slide, naadira si Jack Williamson. So, nag-start ang GMO sa genetic engineering. So, nadira no, in 1951, the term genetic engineering was coined ni Jack Williamson. So, kaning genetic engineering, meaning has been by human society since selective breeding was introduced to humankind. And when animals were domesticated, and yet the process of genetic alternation is all but natural lang siya. And also, kanina si Jack Williamson is siya ni ang nag-author sa katong book, fiction novel nga book nga entitled The Dragon Island. And then katong book, katong sud ato nga novel, it's all about a genetic engineering, no? So, nagets ra nato, no? So now let's proceed to the next slide. So in the next slide, this was years before actual research findings on the DNA's role in the heredity and its structure. So the double helix of Watson and Crick were published, no? So through the continuous search for development sa genetic engineering, no longer stayed in science fiction novel lang siya. So sa nadugayon gud sa sige og research, no, nahimo siyang reality in science laboratories. So kani si Watson og si Crick, they showed that DNA kuno could be the medium of transmission of genetic information. So now, the genetic engineering, gigamit siya katong nakapag-produce na siya og E. coli bacteria. And then, kaning E. coli bacteria was created in 1973. So, the date, there are ongoing researches sa GMOs like sa paggamit og modified males mosquitoes as pest control over the kanang female nga mosquitoes. Kay kanimanggong female mosquitoes mo nang wala siya gigamit it because it carriers of a Zika virus. But however, despite of the many possibilities for creating a solutions for problems and opening doors for innovation. So, ang genetic engineering increased much opposition nga gihapon. So now, let's proceed to our main topic kaning genetically modified organism, kung unsa gud ni siya. Kay kato ganina is introduction lang to siya kung unsa di ay, kung diin gikan ang GMO and kinsa ang mga part ato niya nga mga tao para kinsay mga success nga part atong GMO. So now, let's proceed to our main topic, the genetically modified organisms. Now, I will be discussing sa genetically modified organism kung unsa ni siya. So, genetically modified organism, a term that is used for an organisms created through genetic engineering. So, like what I said ganina nga, kanidi ay GMO, nag-start ni siya sa genetic engineering. And the World Health Organization or the WHO defined the GMO as an organism, either sa plants, sa animals, or sa microorganisms in which the genetic material, DNA, has been altered kuno in a way that does not occur naturally by mating or natural recombination. So, meaning, ang iyahang kuan gimodify, meaning ihang gimodify ang genes ba. As you can see dira no sa example kanang lemon. Ang lemon kay naa siya lahi-lahi nga klase. It's like kuandra pomelo, like nadre kiwi, and nadre melo. So para mabuhat siya ingon ana, para ma-form siya og ingon ana, is ang iyahang genes kay gimodify para maporma or makita nimo ang ingon ana nga result. So giingon ana sa scientists, gimodify nila ang genes. And now, let's proceed to the kanang GMO in food and agricultural industries. So the Center of Genetics and Environmental Health identified the following rules of GMOs in the food and agricultural industries. So, magsugod ta sa first rule. Kay naman siya yung mga rules di ay sa GMOs in food and agricultural industries. So, nadira, first is the pest resistance. So, the pest resistance is genetically modified plants to resist a certain pest. So, for example, the BT corn. So, kanang the DNA or the genome of the BT corn kuno has been modified with the gene of Bacillus thuringiensis, as well bacterium that produced proteins which is toxic to corn borers or worms. So, kaning pest resistant, think of it as giving plants natural shield against sa mga kanang bugs, no? So, kaning mga scientists di ay gimodify nila ang plant or ang gene sa plant or the DNA to produce proteins that are toxic to a specific pest. And this reduce the needs for pesticides, no? Like sa example dira nga ang BT corn kuno, ang iyahang DNA or ang genome is gimodified nila sa Bacillus thuringiensis. And now let's proceed to the second one. So the second one, the virus resistance. So virus resistance is genetically modified plants to resist a certain viruses. No, so it's like vaccinating plants against viruses. Kanang ang mga the plant is genetically modified to resist a specific viruses, preventing kanang mga diseases and crop loss. For example, dira, the GM papaya or rainbow papaya. So, the papaya ring spot virus or PRSV is known to be detrimental to papaya plants. So, the protein of PRSV was introduced to the papaya plant through plant tissues, which turned out to be resistant to the virus itself. So, ang kaning GM papaya or the rainbow papaya is engineered to resist the papaya ring spot viruses. So, a protein from the virus is introduced into the papaya plant, making it resistant to the virus. So, ang epekto ani niya sa vaccine ng humans against measles or the influenza virus. So, nindot ang iyang result sa papaya, no? As you can see dira sa example, ang papaya is wala siya mga ring spot sa iyang genetically modified papayas. Now, let's proceed to the number 3. So, number 3, the herbicide tolerance. So, herbicide tolerance, genetically modified plants to tolerate herbicide. So, unsa dining herbicides? So, herbicide, it means it is a substance that is toxic to the plants. So, gihimo ni nila sa mga scientists or mga farmers, no? Kay kasagaran mga farmers manggod, gisanay nila ang usa ka or gitrain nila ang usa ka plant, particularly kanang sa soybeans, the herbicide tolerance ang plant para ma-destroy ang mga unwanted nga mga vegetations. So, ang mga farmers, ang gihimo nila is ilatong spray ang herbicide para kay atong ilang spray, gipatay to nila ang mga weeds nga kuan kanang mga unwanted vegetation like what I said. But not the soybeans, only sa katurang mga unwanted nga mga weeds, mga vegetations. So, the plants are modified to tolerate herbicides and allowing farmers to spray, no? Like what I said ganina, with weed killers without harming the crop. So, nadira example, the Roundup ready soybeans. So, Roundup ready soybeans, the glyphosate herbicide for weeds was introduced to soybeans, making it tolerant to herbicide itself. So, this allow the farmers to control the weeds without damaging, no, the soybeans or the soybean crop. So, now let's proceed to the fourth. So, the fourth one is the fortification. So, fortification, genetically modified plants fortified with certain minerals. So, kanidi ang fortification, it's like adding extra vitamins and minerals sa usa ka plants. So, ang plants are genetically modified to produce a higher levels of a certain nutrients, improving the nutritional value, I mean. So, example dira, the golden rice. So, golden rice is a beta-carotene or precursor of vitamin A and was introduced through the biosynthesis genes to the rice, making the rice grains fortified with the vitamin A. So, kaning golden rice is modified to produce beta-carotene. So, it helps to combat a vitamin A deficiency in areas where rice is a staple food. So, kanindi ang beta-carotene is one of the need of individual or nato, no? Kay it rich vitamin A, good for good for our vision, no? So, importante kay ni siya tanan. So, now, proceed ta sa ikalima. So, ang ikalima is the cosmetic preservation. So, it is genetically modified plants resist natural discoloration. So, it's like giving plants the ability to resist anang mga browning gani. So ang plants daw are modified to prevent discolorations or spoilage, making them more appealing to the customer. So example dira no, the Arctic apple. The apple variety was genetically modified to suppress the browning of apple due to superficial damage. So kaniding apple, once ma-expose ni siya sa kanaganing cold temperature kay makuha ni siya mo color brown. Kay nga naman kay imo man siya gi-expose bisag dili inta. So it cause oxidative damage, which is ang apple mohimo siyang brown. And kung ma-expose po ni siya sa kanang ma-expose po ni siya sa kanang naidaghan oxygen, more oxygen nga ihang makuan kay ma-absorb pod sa apple. So bit repeat, it occurs discolorations sa skin sa apple or sa bisag unsa nga fruits, no? And kuan siya kanang ma-brown siya or na siya mga spot. So to avoid discoloration, no, dimodified nila sa mga farmers, gigamit nila for food cosmetic preservation. So next, so ang last nga rule is naadira ang kanang increased growth rate. So it is a genetically modified organism that has a higher yield in growth than the normal sa mga species. So think of it making a plant or animals grow faster. So the organisms are genetically modified to grow a faster rate, no? So increasing the production efficiency. Example dira, the aqua advantage nga salmon, no? So the aqua advantage salmon, ang iyang gene from ocean pot or an eel-like fish was introduced to Pacific Chinook salmon, making the salmon grow faster than its normal rate. So kanang aqua advantage salmon di ay have a gene from ocean pot or an eel-like fish added to them, causing them to grow faster than sa anang mga regular nga. These are the GMO that has a higher rate in a growth than the normal species. So manaman ta sa mga rules, again unsa gud tong kabuok. So ang first kay katong, so unsa gud to ang unom ka rules. So first kay pest resistance, the second one is virus resistance, the third one is herbicide tolerance, the fourth one is fortification, the fifth one the cosmetic preservation, and the last one is the kaning increased growth rate. So now let's proceed to the GMO in non-food crops and microorganisms. So now kaning GMOs in non-food crops and microorganisms. So genetically modified organisms in non-food crops and some microorganisms involve the following. So first na pod, flower production. So na din sad po siya unom ka buok, no? And mag-start ta sa flower production. So flower production, it is a GMOs in flower production are seen in modified color and extended vase life or flowers. So the flower production, the GMOs can be used to change the color and prolong the life of flowers. So the genetic modification can create a new colors daw or extend the vase life of the flowers, enhancing their market value, no? Ngun ana di ay siya. Ang example dira kay the blue rose. So the term the blue rose in English signifies the impossible because nobody could produce blue roses by hybridation lang. breeding no matter how much they were desired. So, however, the impossible has become possible due to cutting-edge biotechnologies and the continuous efforts of the scientists. So, kaning flower productions is nadira no ang blue roses. So they believe that kanang flower of a genes that represents due to violet pigmentations instead kuno anang mga color red, color white, color yellow, ang ihang color is violet kuno. It's because the genetic limitations they do not exist in the nature, but kanang with the help anang mga genetic modification, they can create a roses that contain blue pigments, which is gitawag siya fertility. So now the second one, so kanang ikaduha dira is the paper production. So kaning paper production modified characteristic of trees for higher yield of paper production. So this can be genetically modified to have a characteristics that make them better suited for paper production, such as alternating the structure of lignin for easier breakdown. So kanidang lignin is a complex organic polymer that for structural materials to support tissues of poplar trees. So example dira no kay poplar trees man jud. So the lignin is a complex polymer in trees that is removed from wood to make the paper through craft process through the inserting genes that code for ferulic acid in young poplar trees. So the lignin structure is modified kuno, making the lignin easier to break down. So no nadira kanang the lignin kuno, the lignin structure making it easier to break down during the kanang paper making process. So now let's proceed to the third one. So the third one is the pharmaceutical productions. So pharmaceutical productions, it is a modified plants to produce pharmaceutical products. So pharmaceutical production, ang mga GMO plants nato ay nakapag-produce siya og pharmaceutical products. So these modified plants to produce pharmaceutical products in the vinblastine, it is an alkaloid, usually nga gi-add siya sa mga drugs that is used to treat sa anang mga sakit nga cancer. So no kaning it is offering potentially cheaper and more scalable way to produce drugs. So example dira kay the periwinkle plants. So kani siya, it is a bacterial genes were added to the periwinkle plants to enhance the production of vinblastine and the alkaloid usually added to drugs for cancer treatment like Hodgkin's lymphoma. So kani siya, it is modified with the bacterial genes to enhance the production kuno sa vinblastine and the alkaloid that is used to treat kanang sa mga sakit nga cancer, no? So tambal din siya. And next one, so the fourth one is the bioremediation. So kaning bioremediation kuno, it is use of modified plants that can assist in the bioremediation of polluted sites. So kaning bioremediation, it is kanang plants that are modified to accumulate up pollutants from the soil, helping to clean up contaminated areas. So example dira the shrub tobacco, the Nicotina glauca. So kaning shrub tobacco is genetically modified with phytosilatin TOPS S11. So to accumulate kanang zinc, lead, sa kanang cadmium, kanang nickel, and kanang boron. So kana sila gigamit sila to make it useful for kanang bioremediation. So dako kay na siyang tabang for bioremediations, no? So now let's proceed to the fifth one, the enzymes and drug production. So the enzymes and drug production, it is use of modified microorganisms that can produce enzymes for food processing and medicines. So kanida yung enzymes and drug production, mag-modified ni siya organism nga para makapag-produce siya og mga useful nga mga enzymes and drugs. So the microorganisms are modified kuno to produce enzymes for food processing and medicines para improving the efficiency and yield of these products. So example dira is the CG-Sts. So kaning CG-Sts, it is enzymes that is used for food flavor enhancer. It is produced in a higher quantity by Bacterium bacillus, which was genetically modified with the gene of thermophilic anaerobe or the thermoanaerobacter carrying the CG-Sts. So the next one, so the last one is the GMOs in the medical field. So it is a genetic engineering is playing a significant role in diagnosis to treatment for human dreaded diseases, and it also helped in the production of drugs, gene therapy, and laboratory researches. So ani di ang GMOs in the medical field are used to produce anang mga drugs, develop the genes, therapies, and conduct laboratory research and advancing sa mga medical treatment. So example, one example ani dyan is kanang Humulin. So this is a genetically engineered, the insulin used by type 1 diabetes patients and Humalog modified human insulin kuno. So kani siya gi-approve ni siya in katong 1996, as a classical example. So in the past, insulin extracted from the pancreas or the pigs, it can cause allergies reaction kuno. So makakos ni siyag mga allergic reaction sa mga diabetes patients nga nagamit aning insulin. So before atong wala pay human insulin, this came from pancreas sa mga pigs and mga cows, at kanang nakapag-cause ni siya og allergic for some diabetic patients. So in 1978, the researchers from the City of Hope, the National Medical Center, and genetic biotech company, they were able to produce anang mga human insulin, and the gene of insulin was inserted to bacterial DNA that was able to produce anang mga almost exactly the same human jud nga insulin. Mo-proceed na pud ta sa mga benefits of GMOs, So now let's proceed to the benefits of GMO. So the benefits of GMO, the study shows some of the kanang potential benefits of GMO. So na siya mga potential nga mga benefits, So mag-start ta sa studies shows some mag-start ta sa higher efficiency in farming. So one of these benefits ni ang kaning higher efficiency in farming. So higher efficiency in farming with the use ng mga pesticide resistance or mga herbicide tolerance, the GMO crops, there will be less use for herbicides or pesticides, and it is kanang lower cost of labor and cultivation. The next one is the increase in harvest. So the second one is the increase in harvest. So increase in harvest, the GMO crops resistance to pests and diseases. So means it increase the potential kono to of kanang growth and harvest. So the next is the control and fertility. So the control and fertility, controlling the purity of the hybrid seeds or the GMO seeds to ensure the higher yields. The next one is the increase in food processing. So kaning increase in food processing, it altered characteristics of GMOs kanang mga crops, and it helps kana ganing to ace a food processing. Next one is the improvement of desirable characteristic. So, improvement of desirable characteristic, the GMOs offer a longer shelf life, enhance the color and the taste, and also it enhance the production or the reduction of enzymes, ingon ana, and other modified nga mga characteristics sa plants, sa animals, and sa microorganisms. So, next. So, next one is the nutritional and pharmaceutical enhancement. Kani siya nga benefits, the GMO offers a shelf life to enhance niya sa iyang color, taste, so atong akong giingon ganina, no? And production or reduction, so ingon ana. So, last one is the reduce the use of fertilizer and pesticides. So kani, like what I said ganiha, ang GMO crops is like anang certified with the raisin, like example, the golden rice. So the golden rice fortified with the vitamin A, katong good for our vision, no? And there are no edible vaccines and for viral diarrhea diseases. So, ato ang mga vaccine, they are GMO products, modify ang DNA para mahimong vaccines. So, there is a potential risk of GMOs. So, despite the promising claims of the GMOs, the opponent of GMO claims the otherwise. For example, there are studies that shows a link in adoption of pesticides resistance. So the GMO crops to the significant growth of super weeds that became pesticide resistance too. So this cause additional problem to more than kanang 12 million across farms in the United States. So mao ni siya, no, the genetically modified organisms or the GMO in non-food crops, and some microorganisms involve the following. So the first one, kanang since genetic engineering is still a young branch of science, there is an adequate studies on the effects of GMOs to humans and the environment. So pag na-consume ba nato, there is a possibility ba nga genetically modified is mo abot sa atua, ma-modify ba siya ang gene sa atua? So ingon ana ang risk, usa na siya sa risk, sa potential risk sa GMOs. And the second one, the genetic engineering promotes mutation in organisms, which the long-term effect is still unknown. So for example, ang BT corn, namatay siya. Syempre, genetically modified siya. So, ang iyahang genes ma-adto sa oils or ma-adto sa other microorganisms, no? Ang iyahang ng katong soil. So, mutate siya. Mag-mutate ba siya or unsa man kay possible effects sa genes nga moabot sa other microorganisms? No, ingon ana ang sad ang ikaduhang risk. The third one is the human consumptions of GMOs might have the following. So kaning human consumption of GMOs might have the following effects. So first one is the more allergic reactions. So the more the GMO food may trigger more allergic anang reaction, more siya mo creative new ones as a side effect of the gene alternations. So kaning next one pod is the gene mutation, no? So kaning gene mutation, the GMO food may develop abnormalities and mutations and more than the served products of the gene alternations. The third one is the antibiotics resistance. So the GMO food contains antibiotics resistant genes may cause disease causing bacteria likely to be more antibiotic resistance too. So this increasing the possibility anang widespread nga na possibility nga magkataas ang iyang cases anang diseases. And next is the nutritional value. So nutritional value, the GMO food may have change in their nutritional value. So next, proceed ta sa. So now let's proceed the potential environmental risks caused by the GMOs. Daghan siya mga potential risks, no? So in a Karki 2006 summarized the perceived potential environmental risks caused by GMOs. So this identified the major risks are the following. First one is the risk in gene flow. So there is a potential risk of the modified genes to be transferred from the GMO crops to its wild relative or the GMO crop to the relative or the organisms in the soil, in human intestine. So kaning rest in the gene flow, this one of the potential risk mano sa environmental risk sa GMOs. So nagmodify ni siya genes nga matransfer anak ko ng mga gikan sa GMO from wild relative way and organisms in the soil, and kani siya in human intestine or makapag-intake na siya, no? The second one is the emergence of the new forms of resistance and secondary pests and weed problems. So the GMO crops resistance to the certain pesticides can trigger or may trigger the new form of pest resistance, while the GMOs or the herbicides, the tolerance crops may lead to the overuse of the herbicides nga makapatrigger sa ihang new form of weeds and weed resistance. The third one is the recombination of virus and bacteria to produce new pathogens. So kaning recombinations of the virus of the bacteria to produce new pathogens, makamodified ni siya og gene that can be transferred and integrated in the viral of bacterial genes para which may lead to the viral of bacterial genes nga modification or mutations. So this living modified virus and disease may then cause new diseases that kanang may affect the other organisms, including sa mga tao, mga sa atoa, no? So pwede na siya maka-affect sa other organisms. And so naay direct and indirect environmental risk. So mag-start ta sa direct environmental risk. So first one is the introduction of the GMO in a natural environment may cause disruption of the natural communities through competition, no? So, if the GMOs are introduced into natural environments, they could outcompete in the native lands for resources like anang mga sunlight and water disrupting the balance of the ecosystem. Sa example ani kay kanang fast growing of GMO plants that could take over the habitat, pushing out the native plants and the animals that depends on them, no? Next is the possibility of unexpected behavior of the GMOs in the environment if it escapes its intended use and may pose threats or become pests. So, sometimes ang GMO kay kanang might have unexpectedly in the environment man should. So, if they escape from their intended use, they could become pests themselves. So, example ani kay the GMO plant. So, the engineered to grow in a specific or might spread to others, to other areas and become invasive, causing problems for our local ecosystems. The third one is it may cause harmful effects to ecosystem processes if GMOs interfere with the natural biochemical cycles. So, ang GMOs could interfere with the natural processes like anang carbon, nitrogen cycles, which are essential for the health of ecosystem, no? So, example, the GMO plant change the way anang nutrients are processed, no, in the soil. It could disrupt, no, sa entire nato nga ecosystem. And the last one is the persistence of the GMOs genes after its harvest, which may cause negative impacts to the consumer of GMO products. So the GMO genes could persist in the environment even after the GMO crops is harvested. And it is na potential nga maka-affect siya sa consumers of those crops. For example, kanang GMO crop leaves behind modified genes in the soil. So those genes could be kanang taken up by other plants or other. So human naman ta sa direct environmental risk. Now let's proceed to the indirect environmental risk. So the first one is the alteration of agricultural practices like managing negative impacts of GMOs to the environment, such as evolution of the insects, pests, and weeds that become resistant to the GMO crops. So the GMOs required changes, no, in how we farm, like using different anang mga pesticides or mga herbicides. And these changes can have the unintended consequences sa ato ang environment. So, for example, if ang farmers rely too heavily on herbicide tolerant, so the GMO crops, weeds might develop resistance, leading to the use of even stronger herbicides. The second one is the may have impact to biodiversity and caused by the alteration in agricultural practices. And third is may have varied environmental impacts due to the GMO interaction and release in the natural environment. So kanish sila is kaning may have varied environmental impacts due to the GMO interaction and release the natural environment is the GMOs interact with the environment in complex ways, leading to the range of kanang environmental impacts. Environment So kaning ikaduha, no, kay the changes in agricultural practices due to the GMOs maka-reduce ni siya og biodiversity which is the variety of life and ecosystem. Example, if the farmers plant only one type of GMO crop, so it could reduce the variety of plants and animals in the area. And kanang third dira, if the GMOs can interact with environment in a complex ways, it leads to the range of environmental impacts that are hard to predict. Examples, if the GMO crop might affect in soil health, so the water quality and the population of insects and other animals in the area, no. So kato is moto sila ang direct and indirect. Now let's proceed the potential human health risk caused by GMO. So first one is the consumption of GMOs may have adverse effects since it is not naturally or organically produced. So since GMOs are not naturally or organically produced, no, some people worry that they might have kanang adverse the effects of human health. So example, some people believe that eating GMOs could lead to the digestive problems or other health issues. Mao nay nakabalakan sa mga tao. Second one is the consumption of GMOs may alter the balance of existing microorganisms in the human digestive system. So, the GMO could potentially alter the balance of microorganisms in the human digestive system, which could affect the health. For example, if may kanang GMOs might promote the growth of harmful bacteria in the gut, or kanang mag-reduce siya og diversity of beneficial bacteria. So third one is the production of toxins may be detrimental to human health. So the GMO could potentially produce of toxins that are harmful sa mga tao or sa atuang health, no? For example, the GMO crop might produce anang toxin that could cause allergic reactions sa atua or maka other problem, no, sa atuang health. The fourth one is the production of allergens may have adverse effect on the humans. So ano siya, if the GMOs could produce allergens that cause adverse effects on humans, no? If example ani kay if the GMO crop might contained a protein that triggers an allergic reaction sa tao or an sensitive sa mga tao, no? So next is the Human Genome Project. So it is a long-term research efforts to identify the estimated 30,000 genes in human DNA. So the Human Genome Project is a long-term research effort to identify all the genes in the human DNA. So this knowledge can help us understand the potential risk of the GMOs. And by the understanding the human genes, we can better assess how GMOs might interact with our bodies. The sixth one is the mutation of genetically engineered microorganisms. They become more resistant. So, genetically engineered microorganisms could mutate and become more resistant, posing a threat to human health. So example ani a genetically engineered bacterium used in a food production, no, might mutate and become resistant to the antibiotics. Last one is the cloning In February 24, 1997, the first mammal dolly, a sheep from Scotland, was born through cloning. So, kaning kuan cloning di ay dito na ini siya sa Scotland ang ihang first mammal dolly. Let's proceed the biosafety of GMOs. So the Codex Alimentarius Commission, or the Codex, is an intergovernmental body that develops the Codex Alimentarius, known as an international food for code, and responsible for the development of standards, codes of practices, guidelines, and recommendation of food safety. So kaning Codex aims to protect consumer health and ensure the fair practices in international food trade, and coordinate all food standards and work done by international governmental and non-governmental organizations. So the standards of Codex are used by its members to protect the health of the consumer, no? So, pinaagi aning Codex, ilahang maprotektahan ang mga tao. Kay ilahang main objective is to protect the health of the people. And also, the World Trade Organization recognized aning Codex as a standard, guidelines, and recommendations as reference standards for international trade and trade dispute settlement. And the Codex standards are voluntary and do not have binding effects on the national food legislation. So the second one is the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety. So kani siya is gi-establish ni siya nga protocol pag 2003. So wa pa ta nataw-an ni kay kuan pa ta nawalas diyan. So 2003 ni siya gi-establish kani nga protocol. So it is an international environment treaty that regulates the transboundary movements of living modified organisms, or the LMOs. So kani siya nga protocol kuan man ni siya gi-establish pag 2003, and it is an international agreement that aims to protect the biological diversity from the potential risk posed by living modified organisms, and resulting from the modern biotechnology, and it supplements the Convention on Biological Diversity. So the third one is the International Trade Agreement on Labeling of GM Food and Food Products, the agreement that requires exporters of GM food and food products to label their products and give rights to importing parties to reject or accept the GM products. So kaning labeling requirements, these agreements are generally nga gi-required gud ni siya sa exporters of GM food and food products to label their products. Syempre importante kay nang butangan og label ang product, and give importing parties the right or accept or ilahabang i-reject ang GM products. So ang purpose ani sa labeling, it is addresses the consumer or concern of the consumer, and allows them to make informed decisions about purchasing GM products. And also some argue that labeling is kanang justified as a tool for post-market monitoring and enable to consumer to report the adverse reaction of regulators. So in summary of my topic about the genetically modified organism. So, the genetic engineering is an emerging field of science, no, kay nag-start man jud ni ang GMO sa genetic engineering. Sila man gud ang nag-start ani. And its a quest are to preserve and prolong the life in more than 4 decades since the first genetically modified bacteria. And kani siya kay na-produce of thousands genetically modified organisms and have been created and propagated, no? And some are approved by the experts and governments authorities for human and use as a consumption, while others are kept in institutional research laboratories and a subject for more experiments nga ilahang mabuhat. So kana ganing mga scientists, no, mas kuan pa na sila nga daghan sila ma-experiment. So kanang mga food nga atong gipangkaon is gi-experiment pod na sa mga scientists. And dili jud nato kalimtan that there are advantages and disadvantages in using the genetic engineering in both the fields of medicine and of food, and also in agriculture. And there are controversies that are still debatable kuno karon, kay hangtod karon debatable gihapon siya. And the major concerns of the opponents is the long-term effects, no, sa GMOs to sa atoa, sa atong health, sa atong life. And while the proponents flagship is the success stories of the GMOs recipients. So there is still a long way to go for the GMOs to prove itself as humans seek answer to the life predicators as a human play like God, no? So always remember nga ang atong pangkaon ato ang gi-take, no, najud na siya mga advantage, disadvantage, but if dili sad na nato siya unsaon man nato pag live karon sa ato ang world, no? So let's be thankful na lang nga natay gipangkaon, but must be kanang careful pud ta every day, dili lang kay ato hunahon nga it's because that is good, lami na siya kay mag over na pud ta og consume sa ato ang gipangaon, no, ma-over na pud. So dapat i-balance pud ang ato ang gipang intake, and must be careful jud every day sa ato ang gipangkaon. And that's all. I hope you kanang gain knowledge of my topic about GMO or the genetically modified organisms. So thank you everyone for listening my discussion, and mag-send pud ko og reviewer or my review video about sa ako ang topic. Thank you and God bless.